Okay, just make sure you turn your microphones on, please. We're ready to go.
Okay. I'd like to call the Board of Education meeting to order. It's November 18th, 2020 at 6:30. We are in the Brecksville Broadview Heights Education Center. This is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is time for public participation during the meeting as indicated agenda item. Public participation is also available by filling out the Google form. Prior to the regular meeting, the board will meet in executive session for the consideration of the appointment, employment, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official per board policy 0166. This meeting will be live streamed via YouTube and will also be recorded for later viewing. And you can go to that web link, which is BBH Board of Education YouTube channel to find all recordings, and please consider subscribing. The maximum capacity for this meeting is 16 people due to social distancing regulations. Available space is first come, first serve. Let's all stand for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Mr. Dosen?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack?
Yes. Item 2, executive session. I have a motion to enter into executive session.
So moved.
Second. Okay, Mark, and then second by Mrs. Kramer. Roll call.
Mr. Dosen?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack?
Yes. We will now be in executive session and we will resume our regular meeting at 7 o'clock. Thank you.
Okay, let's make sure we're back. Okay. Oh, yes, please. So everyone that's currently going to be admitted is part of the meeting. Just we'll
Do we need to exit
Hi, guys.
executive session?
Somehow I think that's by design now.
Oh, you're a little closer than you were.
Yeah, he is.
and then don't forget to call out of
Yeah,
executive,
we
please.
need to exit.
May I have a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Mr. Dosen?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yeah.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack?
Yes. Item 4, we have the president's announcements. We have a pre-K 5 ventilation upgrade discussion.
So we have Ryan and Nate. They are back. Can you guys hear us okay?
Yep, no problem.
So just to recap, last meeting, we asked for more information about this ventilation system, and that's why you're coming back with more information that the board had requested.
Mhm.
And this is for a new elementary building.
Well, yeah, and I think we were all sent that information, and that information is posted in board docs. And then there was I also put in an email chain where there were questions that were asked and answers that were provided. And so I know, I don't know, Ryan and Nate, if you have anything additional you want to present to us or just be available for questions.
partially available for questions, partially to just go over this one last time. We are going through the process, obviously, getting the design done for this so it can be bid out. But the more we see around the region, this is something that more and more communities are going ahead with. And anytime we could do it as part of the flow of construction, it would be beneficial. We have been working with Thorson Baker with the same sort of system on a couple of other schools. I think Nate, you had mentioned there's one in the region that I'm not working on, but you're helping one of the other teams with presently.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, this last week, we met with some of the design partners at North Royalton Middle School, and we're doing some HVAC upgrades for them. And they opted to include the bipolar ionization in their ventilation upgrades that they're doing at their existing school there, for many of the same reasons that we have been discussing with you guys over the last several weeks.
So we understand, obviously, you know, money is a concern, and we wouldn't have brought this concept forward if we didn't think it was a good system and appropriate for the building that we're looking at. And just long term, I want to emphasize too that this is something that isn't specific to COVID. This is an air purification system that helps with many of these airborne viruses and things of that nature, even as much as molds and stuff like that as well. It tends to, the way it works is it basically makes all those teeny tiny little particles kind of consolidate themselves, and they're able to be trapped with a more conventional style of filtration system. So that's really kind of the beauty of the system, and it's low maintenance, low cost, all those sorts of things. So again, we wouldn't have brought it up if we didn't feel this was a good, solid approach. So that being said, if there are any questions, we'd be more than happy to answer, obviously.
Well, let me just recap what the board has been provided with, and then correct me if I'm wrong. But so the original ballpark estimate was $100,000, and of that $100,000, there was approximately $21,500 is the thinking it would take to put additional electrical runs to prepare for these units, these bipolar ionization units. And that, you know, there was an option on the table that we could choose just to put the electrical in place and postpone the units until a later date. And it was my understanding that if we waited on this, that it wouldn't necessarily, I mean, obviously the cost of the units could go up down the road, but there, from a labor standpoint and putting it in, that it wouldn't necessarily increase the cost of any significant amount to postpone and do this later, other than the cost of the units could go up, but then again, they could go down.
That is, yeah, that's correct. The only thing I was trying to point out, and maybe I didn't do effectively, is just the matter of flow of construction. I mean, for example, you're having a contractor installing your HVAC system and your electrical that's there. The one benefit you get, for an added benefit you get for doing it now, is just that you have the same contractor that's responsible for the units putting this add-on system in. In the future, you might not have that situation. So there is that value that maybe isn't represented in the, you know, ones and zeros that are associated with costs, but it is that sort of sole source approach that I think does have some value to it too.
I certainly believe that, sorry, I was gonna say, I certainly believe that installing the electric later is going to cost you more, just because of the logistics of trying to do that. So the most difficult cost expenditure and coordination effort in the future will be trying to pull the electric. I know there was a question that came up near the end of the last meeting, was, can we use the power that's already nearby to power these things? And we looked into it a little bit more, and we did not believe that that was a viable option. And so we do think a dedicated circuit coming from a panel in the area should be provided to power these units.
And that was related to the amount of amperage these draw, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, it's not high amperage, but the way we have it currently circuited is some of these convenience outlets are powering more than one unit. And so even though they may only be pulling 5 or 6 amps, if there's 3 or 4 units on a circuit, we're kind of already tapped out on that, and we can't just jumper off of that to provide the bipolar ionization power.
Yeah, I guess the other piece of this was we were sent information, and then again, it's all posted in board docs, and while this technology looks really promising, and I know other organizations are already starting to go forward with it, there wasn't any solid data that showed a decrease in the level of illness or absenteeism, probably because it's just too new and there's not enough runway to be able to say, hey, was data collected about absenteeism or level of illness in these buildings, and then it was installed, and then you had enough data on the back end to say, okay, now we saw a 10% decrease or some level of decrease. And so I guess my thinking on the matter was, it makes sense to me to go forward to put the electrical in, but I'm right now at a place where I would want to hold off on actually putting the units in, since putting them in later wouldn't really increase the cost substantially, and it would give us an opportunity to see better what the data actually looks like, because the technology looks promising, but I'd really like to see what the data shows, where there's proven case studies that show levels of illness or absenteeism or some metric proves out that this technology is working.
If you don't mind, if I could add in one little piece to that. Part of that is just the specific tests that have been conducted. So it may be something where just nobody has pursued that information at this point. Just for the record, that might be the case. The bulk of the tests that you find online, the bulk of the tests that you're able to find through the manufacturers, through various entities that have installed these systems, is all specifically related to the amount of the material that it basically takes out of the air and how quickly it does so. And that was, I think, the one test, it essentially got rid of the virus particles that were on surfaces within something like 30 minutes, I believe, if that's something around that nature, 20 to 30 minutes within a room at a standard sort of ventilation rate. So that's the kind of information that's out there right now. You're right. I couldn't find any information related specifically to absenteeism, and that might be a product of, just kind of the tests that have been done. Our issue that we have now, and I just want to lay this out there too, is that I don't think you'll have any good sound data like that for quite some time, just based on obviously the situation in Cuyahoga County at this point, but just across the nation. I mean, especially since they're saying the virus, is peaking, it's at a peak level right now. And, you're not going to have rollout of any sort of vaccines for, a month or two or more possibly. So collecting legitimate base information, base testing of, a current situation versus, a flu situation or something like that. They just don't have a runway, I don't think, in the near future, next year or so to do any of that sort of testing. So it's probably a ways out.
And I would want to clarify that this is not a new technology. I think it's being applied more now because of the pandemic for viral control, but this technology has been around for at least 10 plus years for improving indoor air quality. So I would agree with Ryan that since it's been around for so long and no test specifically has been done on absenteeism, the tests that we were able to find through the manufacturers and various websites are more scientific in nature, where they literally go in and measure, percentage of virus killed over a certain amount of time. But to do an absenteeism, would be a major undertaking, and partnerships with various schools who have data pre and post. And we just weren't able to find any of the major manufacturers that had actually conducted that. There's more working with hospitals and scientists to talk about the facts of what volatile organic compounds and mold and viral components are actually killed on a percentage basis.
Well, go ahead.
I'm just going to piggyback on what Mark said, because this was just, I don't disagree with what he said at all. In an ideal world, I think it would be great to be able to add it, but just being around we have so many other permanent improvement needs right now that have been on the waiting list for so long. I just feel like I'd like to, get some of those addressed before we, take this plunge. That's my 2 cents.
I agree with both of you. The same thing. I'd rather see us work on the list that we had created before we start moving something to the top of the list.
Ryan and Nate, if we move forward with hypothetically installing and running the electrical with the potential at some point down the road installing or being interested in installing the mechanisms that are going to take care of this, is there any instance that, and I guess in this day and age, anything is possible, but do we run the risk of new technology in the next handful to even 15 years not being supported by the electrical that we've run, even as a preventative measure to mitigate costs in anticipation of possibly installing these items, but then like down the road, something could change and then what we've even spent money on isn't going to be sufficient?
So potentially, I mean, without knowing what technologies are coming down the road, because you just don't know about them because they're in development, that sort of thing. I am guessing there's going to be a rush on this type of system, but I mean, this concern has been around since the 70s. I mean, you had all those issues with closed building syndrome and all that kind of stuff. So people have been thinking about this for a long time. So there's been a lot of thought put into that. So I can't imagine anything wildly different than what we have now, unless Nate, you can think of something that you've heard of that's coming. I think putting in the conduits at a bare minimum makes sense. That allows you some flexibility to change electrical if you need to in the future. I mean, you essentially have the pathways. Pathways are the most difficult part. But that being said, I wouldn't shy away from bidding this now. There is no hurt in bidding this and finding out where the pricing comes in. And if it comes in more affordably, it might be more palatable. If it comes in higher, it might be less palatable, but at least gives you the option to, analyze the cost data at that time and make a decision. At a minimum, I would recommend putting in the conduits, and I would recommend bidding this just so you can see where all this stuff falls. There's no harm in any of that.
And we could refuse the bids.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I concur. And as long as you're pulling conduit, not wire, that does give you some flexibility in the future because the system is very low amperage. And so if we were to pull the wire, it may be undersized if for some reason you decided to go with a different technology. But if you pull a decent sized conduit and you decide another technology comes out and it's twice the power, you would have an opportunity to potentially pull the wire you need and circuit it differently for something greater.
Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we talked about this at the core meeting last Thursday, I think Craig and I gave the go ahead to put the conduits in already. And yep. We also gave the go ahead to have the architects design the system, correct?
Yeah. And yep, sorry.
And those two costs, when you two originally came to the board and, said it's about $100,000 expense, that cost included the conduit running and the architect design of that, correct?
Correct.
So we've already agreed to $25,000 into this project between the conduit and having the architect to having Thorson design the product. So right now you're down to $75,000 potentially for the system, correct? Okay. So we're not talking about $100,000 expense now because we've authorized the conduit, we've authorized the architect. We're talking about a $75,000 expense. And, I hear the board and we do have a laundry list of items, none of which that are $75,000, all of which are in the millions of dollars range. And I just want to remind everyone that, this is money that is already built into the bond. This is not an excess cost. It's not going back and asking taxpayers for additional money. It's money that can be used for this because it's in bid day savings and or in contingency money. And I understand whatever money we have saved out of this project can go towards those other projects we have in the district. But at this point, because there's already been authorization of the conduit, there's been authorization already for the architects to come and design, we're talking really about $75,000, which is not going to tick off any of those bigger projects we have on the list, just as a point of reference to everyone in this conversation.
Okay, so if conduit's already been run and that money's been spent, and we agree to send it out to bid just to get the numbers to see what we're truly working with. and we decide to table it until we get further down into the project, can we, like, as the last brick is being laid, can we take a look at what savings we've had throughout the project and take a look at what's remaining in funding that might be going towards other PI projects, and assess then if we're able to or have interest in installing those items then? Is that, how much of a problem would that be?
It's not a problem. It's just a matter of timing and workflow. That's all it is. I mean, this building's got roughly 18 months left, if my math is correct in my head, on the schedule. And the last probably 6 months of that is really, I would say about 6 months from the end is the last time that I'd really be considering this in the immediate future. After that, I mean, then you run the building, you operate it, you see how things work. But that 6 month window is probably the last point I would consider, doing the system as part of this project. Just from the standpoint of that would give you enough time to install the system, have the system ordered, and do all that sort of stuff. Might actually be closer to 6 to 8 months, just with shipping and stuff of that nature. Otherwise, you're going to be installing a system potentially as the building's trying to open and stuff like that, and that's less than ideal. But I mean, you have a little bit of time, but again, depending on how the bids end up, hopefully I'm way off and Nate's way off and it's cheaper, and you see how that is. And like I said, maybe it's more palatable, but you do have a little flexibility there. But there is, like I mentioned before, there is that benefit in having everything installed by one contractor at one time too. There is more and more I think about it that I do have a little reservation on that, just because I've seen that be an issue in other projects. But
Let's see what the bids are.
Yeah, I'd like to see what the bids are.
I don't know that we have a majority that wants to see that.
If the bids aren't too much trouble, I don't have a problem going out to do it, but I just feel like, again, I mean, I know it's only, and thank you, Joelle, for clarifying that it's $75,000, but I'm sure Chris can find some other ways to spend that $75,000.
I'm just thinking of the challenges that one of our sports team would have raising $75,000. So no, it's not going to pay for the whole project. And I'm not saying that it's going towards that project, but I don't find $75, chump change or something small, given the fact that there's other things that we've already put on our list. So I think getting a bid is, fine, but I really, in the end, don't have any intention of allocating it for that when I know that there are other things that, I'd rather see our money go towards.
Well, and two, I think it gets to the point of, I know a question I asked, it was probably last month or maybe before, of what does our sub costs look like in the interest of having a conversation around the health of our students and the health of our teachers in this environment, and the purported increased health effects of this system in place, is if we aren't spending as much money on sub fees and that sort of thing, how quickly in theory could we recoup what now sounds like maybe $75,000 instead of $100,000 in theory? To recoup that cost is it's still something that I'm weighing, but I'd like to see where the numbers come in.
I don't know if that's a valid statistic, because we can take sick days to care for children. We can take sick days to care for parents. And so just because somebody takes a sick day doesn't mean they're physically sick, to know how the system would impact them personally, because sick days can be used for a multitude of reasons. So I don't know if that's a valid data point. But I will say, because I'm very passionate about this new building, as I think all of you know, we've got one chance to do this right. And while there is an opportunity to put this system in later, and while, yes, you're taking the risk that the systems can go up in price, they could also go down in price. There's also an installation cost, because we have an installation cost now, but then if we wait and do this later down the road, there's going to probably be additional installation costs, because you're going to have to take things off, ceiling tiles, and do some additional maintenance work or physical labor to get these systems installed at a later date. And so, from our vantage point, I will speak for myself. If this was not something that was going to be a cost factor over the $50,000 that Craig and I could approve, I absolutely would have approved this, because what harm does it do? You have the potential, and while you don't have the data, you have the potential for this, impacting whether or not we're spreading cold and some other viruses, and keeping our air as clean as possible, regardless if we were in COVID. And if we weren't in COVID right now, I'd probably still say that this was a valid change order to our project to ensure that we can keep our environment as clean and safe as possible for our kids and for our staff that are going to be working in that building. And so, the reason this is at a board level and a board conversation, it's because it's above that $50,000 threshold that we have the authorization to approve those change orders. But I will speak for myself to say that if it wasn't at that cost point, this was something that I would have absolutely authorized to do, because I feel it's the best thing that we can do for our staff and students to keep them as safe as possible, COVID or not.
Well, and I think the reason why we thought that, Joelle, was kind of like, we look at how tight the schedules are in the school and how we can't get people to clean in between classes. And when you talk about the research of this, that and how it's able to deactivate the viruses, cold, flu, whatever, within 20 to 30 minutes as a constant factor, I guess that's why we kind of thought this would kind of just made logical sense, knowing that it should result in less absenteeism. But again, as Joelle mentioned, people take sick days for a multitude of reasons. So I don't know if we'll ever get true data, especially in the education sector, because it's a little bit more, our industry allows for more sick days than most other places, and they're they're not scrutinized, but they have different reasons you can use them for. So I don't know if we'll ever get specific data on absenteeism, although we would hope to see that improve with better air quality, as well as deactivating those viruses on the surfaces in our buildings.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a zero-sum game. Money that would be spent on these units cannot then be spent on roofs, windows, carpeting, a generator, whatever. When we went out to the community for this bond issue, it was to offline 4 buildings and replace them with 1 new building, and also to generate sufficient funds to help start addressing our long backlog of problems with the rest of the campus, the high school, the middle school, this building, parking lots, athletics, all of that. And so when the numbers for the new building came in, just as kind of a walk down memory lane, the new building ended up costing more than we had hoped when we started this. And what suffered right from the get-go was money that was going to be used for PI improvements and for our PI list. So originally we were hoping we were going to get $5 million out of this bond issue to address our backlog, and that got cut down significantly to about $1.5 million. So every dollar that we can save out of this new building can go against that list. And by running the conduit, which is already a done deal, we have the hard part taken care of. Putting these units in after the fact, that can be done at any point in time. Maybe there'll be better data coming out in a couple of years. Maybe there'll be better technology coming out, especially after COVID. And in my mind, these both bipolar ionization units and air purification could end up right back on our PI list with everything else. And we could weigh that against, should we do that or should we do roofs? Should we do that or should we do windows? Should we do that or should we do a new track or new tennis courts or what have you? So, we are not missing a window of opportunity here, in my opinion. We are taking advantage of it by running the conduit and doing the hard part first and delaying and postponing this to another point in time where, the board in a year or 2 or 3 years or 5 years or whenever can put it on the list and say, yes, this makes sense. Let's spend X number of dollars to do it.
Okay. So did I hear that 3 board members want this bid out still? Is that correct?
I would like to see it bid out, yes.
I guess if you guys want to do it, that's fine, and it comes in really low, but okay.
I mean, I'm fine with getting bids, but I'm not fine with.
There we go. We have
pursuing
direction.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ryan. Thank you, Nate.
And please know, I think that the technology sounds great and really promising. Like, I'm not opposed to it, just the other stuff is the list is so
Yep.
long.
Yep. Item 5, board member committee reports. We have financial liaison audit committee.
Nothing. Nothing on the, well, actually, Craig, I mean, you did just have an audit, but that was a pension system.
Correct. I don't know what the procedure has been here. So we're finishing up GAP, and then we also have the financial audit over the next, that'll be done. So GAP should be submitted hopefully next week. And then the financial audit should be done right before Christmas, hopefully.
Okay.
Usually when that audit is done, then we get notified
The
about when the
post-conference.
meeting is, so that if board members want to attend the meeting, there's an opportunity to do that.
Okay. Like that's the one I did when I first got here, I think, the post audit one.
Right.
Okay, sure.
Permanent improvement committee,
No updates.
board policy committee.
Well, we have our final reading of our policies that we discussed 2 months ago, and we have a new one coming up tonight.
We do. Then we have sustainability committee.
No updates.
No update. Okay. We have 6 district committee reports, district committee reports. We have transportation appeals committee,
Nothing.
Cuyahoga Valley Career Center report. Mr. Gilbride. He was there.
I saw him on.
Mr. Gilbride, if you would unmute yourself, that would be great.
There you go.
Working on it, thank you.
Sorry, he wasn't smart, Alec.
No, none taken, believe me. Good evening, all. First and foremost, I just wish to express my gratitude to the board for reappointing me for another 3 years. I appreciate the support, and I will do my best to see that we serve the board and the community as best we can. Couple of updates. First of all, as you may know, our superintendent, Dave Mangus, is highly focused on keeping the building open as long as possible. He's a very strong proponent of hands-on learning, and in the career technical field, it's really critical that our kids get that hands-on experience. So he's working very diligently to keep the building open. We currently are experiencing our most trying times, as most of you can imagine, as we're seeing spikes all throughout the community. We do have several staff members who are at home quarantining right now. We do not see any transmission occurring in the building, but we do see many related issues with college kids coming home, kids being exposed in other areas. So it's mostly related to contact, not direct exposure, and not traceable through the building. But it is a challenge, as I know you all are facing as well in our home district. We are looking at a new 5-year forecast that the board will be voting on next month. The only thing I can tell you at this point until the forecast is approved is that it's a positive improvement on the last 5-year forecast. Most of that is due to the lack of the state cutting any funds to Cuyahoga Valley Career Center. And also we are not seeing the dip in collections on any of the taxes that we had expected due to the current COVID situation. So the 5-year forecast that I believe will be approved will be a positive improvement on what we're currently working with. That 5-year forecast does show deficit spending beginning in calendar year 2025. So we'll keep our eyes on that. But in general, Cuyahoga Valley Career Center continues to be fiscally sound and operating at a good level. We had a most recent, last month, our strategic plan review. I can report that we're continuing to see growth in several areas. Key areas of our plan is to enhance and expand career technical opportunities for all students, And along that goal, we're seeing increases in certificates and license assessments. Currently, all of our programs have opportunities for kids to achieve certificates and licenses, which are critical in helping them get employment at the next, if they choose to go out into the working world. We are also seeing improvements in career tech credit transfers. So college opportunities are stronger now through CVCC. The CT squared, or as I mentioned, career tech credit transfers to all state colleges are being enhanced, and our local articulation agreements with Tri-C are also being expanded. So kids can get college credits at a larger rate than they had seen in the past from CVCC. Participation in career tech student organizations and participation in competitions is also being monitored and improving. So the strategic plan and the monitoring is definitely seeing improvements and moving these criteria forward. Couple of other notes that I would just pass along. Hal Kendrick, our business manager, has submitted his resignation effective at the end of the calendar year. So we are in process of replacing that position. Our adult education programs, which currently are primarily carried forward by the nursing program. Dave Mangus, the superintendent, is looking at expanding that to see if we can add additional bellwether type programs that would diversify that offering and make that more of a fiscally sound program moving forward. Those are the key updates. I guess I would ask the board for some feedback on how they would like to see communication in the future, if the past has been acceptable or if they would like to see some changes.
And I can tell you in the past, we hadn't I was on the board, but before I was actually on it, we never had heard anything about CVCC. I think that you've definitely, you've taken that communication to the level that I know what's going on there. I understand, and I can explain to community members what's going on at CVCC. We've shared our concerns with you in the past. I feel like that communication has been heard by you. I encourage you to continue, working on some of those concerns that maybe we as a board need to, put those in writing to you. So it would be part of Brecksville's strategic vision for CVCC as well. But personally, I can say I've liked that you've come and part of our board meetings and communicated to us, and the method that you've communicated has really been excellent in my opinion.
Thank you, Madam President. Any other feedback or questions that I can answer?
Yeah, I would just agree and add on to that. So I think it's very beneficial to hear you give updates, whether it's in person or through Zoom. This ability to zoom in is permanent right now, so that we can accommodate people in our meetings that can't physically be here. So whether you're zoomed in or you're here in person, hearing from you and having the opportunity to ask questions is very helpful. And with our community being able to dial into it too, I think that provides a lot of benefit. So appreciate your willingness to for your past service for 3 years and your willingness to serve another 3. So thanks, and look forward to more updates. And I am really glad to hear that your financial situation is stable and that there's no talk of new money in the future.
No, that's certainly one of the objectives. So very good. That's everything I have, unless you have further questions.
Mr. Gilbride, when do we have that rotating board seat? Where are we at in the alphabet? Do you know?
I believe we Independence. I believe no, it's
okay.
No, it's not Independence.
It's okay. If you would get back to us on that.
Yeah, I will. It's Garfield Heights. Garfield Heights is this year, so I'm not sure who's next, but
okay.
I was the rotator initially, and that was 3 full calendar years ago. So we've got a ways to go.
We have a ways to go. Yeah, you're right. Okay. Thank you.
You bet. My pleasure. Thank you.
We have safety and security meeting report.
No update.
No update.
Mr. Gilbride, if you'd like to go, we'd like you part of the meeting, but I know you're busy, so you decide. Thank you. Schools Foundation report,
Nothing at this time.
PSO report.
The Star Sports Bees Online Spirit Challenge runs through December 23rd. Any spiritware purchases made by any parent, grandparent, teacher, administration, 10% goes to the school. You need to write the name of the school in your add a note section. Banned citrus sale will continue. And you can go on our website to get the, it's an online sale this year, and the boxes of fruit will be delivered to your home. Let's see, Highland Drives, online, Scholastic, everything's online. Scholastic Book Fair continues to November 22nd. So if you're interested, you need to do it in the next 4 days. And Highland's also planning a virtual elf shop for all students in early December. Again, go to the Highland PSO site in our district, and you'll learn more about that in the coming days. I just want to thank all the PSOs for all the things that they do for our district and for each of our buildings. That's it.
Okay, other board member reports? No? Item 7, superintendent's announcements. We have A, LLS Student of the Year, and B, construction update.
It is my pleasure to introduce to you our assistant principal at the high school, Mr. Kevin Jacob, who's going to introduce you to 3 wonderful, wonderful students who are doing amazing things. And they wanted an opportunity to tell you about their amazing things that they're doing. So Kevin, if you want to, Mr. Jacob, excuse me, if you want to go ahead and introduce Ava, Alexa, and Caitlin and tell us a little bit about them and what they want to talk to us about.
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Magyar. My name is Kevin Jacob, and I am one of the assistant principals at Brecksville-Broadview Heights High School. I am very excited to not only introduce the Student of the Year program to you, but the 3 young ladies that Ms. Magyar just referenced. The Student of the Year program is a program that is sponsored by the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. We've had some interactions with them before for programs such as Pennies with Patients, but I actually serve on the leadership board for the Northeast Ohio Student of the Year program. There are 26 competing schools this year from all over Cuyahoga County, Medina County, Lorain, Summit, Portage, Geauga, that are working together and in competition with one another for the very ambitious goal of raising $1 million generated through the efforts of high school students to fight the battle against leukemia and lymphoma through the support and research of the disease, and also to support those individuals and their families who are afflicted with such, the terrible disease that is leukemia lymphoma. 3 of our students at Brecksville-Broadview Heights High School, Caitlin Leiden, Alexa Volweiler, and Ava Singh, unbeknownst to me, were actually introduced to the program by a friend of theirs this summer and took on the leadership challenge to engage students at Brecksville-Broadview Heights High School and their community with a very ambitious financial goal that I'll let them outline for you. Ava, Alexa, and Caitlin have been very active in making the rounds and meeting with PSO, Ms. Magyar, Mr. Ost, myself, and other community organizations in hopes of trying to build community networking relationships and connections for the future to help raise some significant dollars for this very worthy cause. So ladies, I would like to give you guys the opportunity to share the great work that you've done already and a little bit about what you've learned about LLS so far.
Okay, so basically we're going to be explaining why we got involved and why we personally wanted to do it in ways that you guys can help or anyone in the community can help us.
You can go to the next slide.
So me, Ava, and Caitlin are all juniors at the high school. That's just next slide.
So the Student of the Year program is a 7-week initiative, and it's a fundraising competition between different high school teams. And the money they fundraise goes directly to LS to help those currently fighting leukemia and lymphoma in our own community. And we have a team of students who are support us on our journey.
So approximately every 3 minutes, someone in the US is diagnosed with a type of blood cancer. And one of the reasons we got involved was because each of us have family or friends that have been affected by this type of cancer. And I'm sure many of you guys know like different people that have gotten blood cancer before. And also one of our friends, Claire Martin, she is a cancer survivor and we used to cheer with her. And she also participated in this LLS program. So she's a great role model for us and she like inspired us to do this.
Another reason we got involved was it gives us an opportunity to make a direct impact on those in our community. We wanted to help those around us in any way that we could. Also, it helps us gain skills that we can't get in a regular high school class. We also wanted to spread kindness to those around us in our community. Also, in such an interesting time with COVID-19, we get the opportunity to start returning back to our normal lives, but those with cancer and life-threatening diseases don't get that opportunity. So we wanted to do whatever we could to keep them happy and healthy.
So each year, LS represents 2 people as our honored heroes, and they're example of individuals who are fighting for their lives and who we are directly helping with our fundraising.
The first honored hero is Tim, and he just graduated from Strongsville High School and is now a freshman at Kent State University. And yeah, that's a video you can play that he made.
I have been chosen to be an honored hero for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, to share my story and mission of LLS. My name is Tim Tusick, and I'm 20 years old. I have great parents and amazing siblings. I used to be a strong, athletic, and healthy person and was blessed my entire life. Until March 2019, when I was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. I was told I shouldn't even be alive. At 19, I began a fight for my life and watched as cancer and chemotherapy obliterated me. I lost all my strength and mobility. My hair fell out, and I felt terrible all the time. I was forced to go through so much change. I was told I wouldn't go back to school for 2.5 years. I was told that I would be exercise intolerant. And I was told all the ways my life would suck. So I watched as the world turned gray, but I never felt bad for myself. I only focused on what I had left to do. As bad as I felt and as weak as I was, I never let anything break me. I decided I was going to kick cancer to death. And I found a deeper appreciation for life and all that I've been given. And once again, I found happiness, and it was through gratitude. I didn't care what my doctor said was impossible, and even ran 5Ks to raise money and sold thousands of wristbands. I returned to school 2 years earlier than my doctors thought was possible. Every obstacle I face, I look at the road to grow and become better. Every day I am battling a disease, but I am the one who's winning. Cancer will never define me or crush my worth. Join me in supporting LLS and kicking cancer by becoming a candidate for the Cleveland Students of the Year campaign.
And the other honored hero is Colin.
So our fundraising campaign kicks off on January 9th and it goes until February 27th. And in this time, our goal is to raise $50,000.
So now there's ways that you can help or help get those in our community involved to help us. So we're going to make a website, and you can personally donate here or share the website with anyone that you think would donate. Also, if you have any connections to potential corporate sponsors, you could get us connected with them, or connections to auction items, because at the end of the year, there's a gala where there's a silent auction and any money made goes to our fundraising. Also, if you have any ideas for fundraising events that are COVID friendly, we would like to hear them. Contact us if you have any ideas.
So once we finish our website, Mr. Ross will send it out like in the upcoming weeks. So that's where you can like read more about what we're doing and make like an individual donation if you would like.
I think is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
I have to say, nice job. Way to take things into your own hands. It's very impressive. And there have been students who have gone ahead of you and done the same thing. But this is like on your own in the summertime. You found something like this out, and this is what it's about. This is what community is about. And I know you should be impressed with yourself. I hope you are, because you have thoroughly impressed this board with what you're doing. So absolutely, anything we can do to support you. I know you've hit the rounds of the PSOs. This community, definitely. I know we have foundation. We have Mrs. Wigman, who's also on there as well. So there are lots of opportunities for us to help you in this COVID world. Definitely.
And I have a hint for you. Check out the Brecksville Kiwanis. Okay, I think they will support you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for your leadership, ladies.
Thank you, girls. You did a wonderful job as always.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. We have the construction update next, Mrs. Magyar.
Yes, there's a document that is posted in board docs for anyone to review, but if you have not been to the site or you haven't driven by the building, our elementary school is definitely taking shape. It's exciting to start to see some of the spaces that we only saw in blueprints before, and now they're actually coming to fruition. And so it's a pretty incredible process to see and watch. And we just sent out our recent construction buzz and had a bunch of pictures from the ribbon cutting ceremony and also from our beam signing. So pretty excited about that. But it's an exciting time for all of us in the midst of dealing with all of COVID. That's our bright spot is watching the creation of this new building and this new home for all of our children in Brecksville and Broadview Heights.
Okay.
One thing I'd like to add is that Glenwood Trail is now open.
The crisis is
The residents are very happy, I'm
Yes.
assuming.
So am I. It's a shortcut to my property.
Very good. Okay, item 8, treasurer's announcements. We have the A, fair funding, House Bill, SB comparison.
This is also actually just more for information. I'll talk a little bit about this in my forecast piece. This was just a great document, if you haven't had a chance to take a look at it, to compare what's between the House bill and the Senate bill. They're very, very similar. There's very few changes, which is good. It means that they're working together and they're understanding each other. And it is still slated to go up for a vote by the end of this calendar year. And we're hoping it actually happens. So even if it's not fully funded, it's a good step in the right direction to, I guess, fix the DeRolf situation from saying that public schools were inadequately funded in 2000, or the way that they're funded is unconstitutional. So this kind of addresses a lot of that, and they've been working on this for years. So this is pretty like landmark type of legislation if they can get it past the finish line. So we'll just continue to see what happens over the next couple of weeks.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
What a ray of light. Okay. Item 9, community communications. We have A, hearing of the public. Mr. Yanagos, do we have any Google Forms?
I have 21.
Oh, very good. Okay, so I'm gonna read.
Okay.
So if you go over 3 minutes, you're cut off. No. Okay, hearing of the public, persons wishing to address the Board of Education may do so at this point. No formal action will be taken on subjects that are not included on this agenda until the board has had an opportunity to study them. Comments regarding personnel must be submitted in writing through the office of the superintendent in order for the board to complete the planned agenda in an effective and efficient manner and to provide sufficient opportunities for members of the public to be heard. Hearing of the public shall be limited to a maximum of 30 minutes, during which each speaker shall be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes.
Do I count as one speaker or 21?
That depends.
Okay, I'm only gonna do this one other time. I think that my partner in crime over here should have to read alternating ones, by the way, Miss Magyar.
I can't see them though, Mr. Yanaglas.
All right. Number 1 is from Sean Galick. It says, I'm glad that the superintendent decided against a 5-day in-person school week. I am proud of her for putting the safety of our kids first and foremost. Going forward, please continue to follow the sound judgment of our superintendent and stay in the hybrid and remote models. Number 2 from Marlon Knight. I was relieved that the decision was made to remain hybrid in light of the rising cases. I feel that hybrid is the best model possible at this time, and was feeling very anxious about 5 days a week, knowing that social distancing would be nearly impossible. I do feel sympathy for those for the teachers who have to rearrange their plans 4 times due to decisions being made at the last minute. In the future, it would be nice for everyone's ability to plan efficiently if the decisions that are made would be followed through with. The third one from Gina Andrassi. As an educator and school psychologist of 20 years, I feel very strongly that it is in the best interest of students, both academically and in regards to social and emotional development, that they return to 5 days a week of in-person instruction. I have had to put my first grader and fifth grader, it actually says P-U-T-T, so pull my first grader and fifth grader from the district and move them to a private school, and my sixth grader is barely holding on. Number 4, Roger Bundy. I'm the parent of a senior, sophomore, and fifth grader. As this drags on, the cumulative harm to the educational, social, and emotional needs of my children are devastating and far outweigh any risks to them of contracting what amounts to a severe form of a common cold, from which the likelihood of them suffering any great harm is nearly non-existent. Statistically, my children are significantly more at risk of serious injury or death from riding a bike or operating and riding in an automobile. Yet there is no public health order restricting them from these everyday activities. Society's collective reaction to this health crisis is way out of proportion to the risk. We have simply lost our collective minds. We moved to the district in 2017 for the quality education it provides. The teachers, staff, and administration have done exceptional work to make the best of a bad situation, and I applaud them for all of their tireless efforts to make this work. However, no one can truthfully state that my children, or any others, in this district are receiving the same quality of education we all expect and that they deserve. History will judge us by how we served our children during this crisis and how we responded to their needs in the face of these great difficulties. In my opinion, we are failing our children, all of us, and we can and must do better for them. Several months ago, the board contemplated a commission or committee of advisors, experts from the community to help the district address and respond to the crisis. If this was not implemented, it should be, and fast. This is a community made up of parents, teachers, and families who have both the expertise and the wherewithal to improve our response to the crisis in a way that better meets the needs of our children. There are many people invested in this community and this district who are willing to roll up their sleeves and get creative about how to minimize the negative impact this crisis is having on our children. The collateral damage to our children is unacceptable, and we can do better. We expect the best work and effort from our students. How can we look them in the eye if we are not doing the best work and effort as adults to minimize the impact on them? Let us help you help them by working together as a community. Number 5, from Elizabeth McMillan. Hello, as coronavirus cases have surged, the school district has stayed in a hybrid model. With the hybrid model, can you implement the teacher staffing and resources along with other measures to create effective hybrid environments for those that are having concerns with this model, as it seems to be seems to be the way we are doing schooling this year. Number 6, from Melanie Kieran. Hello, members of the board and administration. First, please note that prior to July of 2020, I have never raised any issue or dissent with this group or administration. I've been supportive of the district, volunteered, and sang the praises of teachers and decision makers here in my hometown. I was proud to be a B. Since July, I've written many times asking for the district to provide my children with the education and the educational opportunities they deserve. I will continue to make this request this evening. First, I think it is important for the board and administration to recognize where your role begins and ends. You are fundamentally charged with providing children educational opportunities and resources and preparedness for college and career. If you are overwhelmed with the predicament we are in, it's probably because you have assumed a role that you do not have. Your role is not to advocate for the union. Your role is not to champion a particular population of families. Your role is not to parent. Parenting and board and making decisions for families is for families alone. This district is composed of extremely capable individuals, which include doctors, attorneys, engineers, rocket scientists, and yes, teachers. We are capable of making the best decisions for our own children. We need this board and administration to remove the barriers that prevent us from choosing what is best for our families. I'm not going to tell other families what model is best for their children, and this board and virtual families should not dictate to my family what is best. You do your role, and I will continue to do mine. Lastly, I encourage all of you, as I have done since July, to use local data and make rational decisions based on local data. Does it make sense that our football team went an entire season of essentially hand-to-hand combat with 0 issues, only to have many of our players be healthy, quarantined days after the season ended because of a classmate who tested positive was in an arm's reach? There's lots of talk about the opportunity for students to learn something from this COVID period. There's lessons in creativity, problem solving, and resiliency. Our children have been learning these lessons for nearly a year. I think it's time grown-ups learn these lessons, create a plan that provides families choice, and allow our kids to learn the lessons they need in their AP Science classes, orchestra, from their wrestling coaches, and from seeing each other. We need to do better. Number 7, Allison Dranowski. I just wanted to thank Ms. Magyar and the board for making the decision to keep elementary students in hybrid to the end of the year. With coronavirus rates increasing, staying in hybrid is the best choice you could have made. Kids still get some in-person classroom time, but in such a way that risk factors are reduced. I understand we all have a goal of getting our children in school 5 days a week, but given the circumstances, the hybrid model is a good compromise for the time being. Number 8, Jen Elting. With today's Cuyahoga County Board of Health resolution to implement a COVID-19 stay-at-home health advisory, with the specific recommendation of universities and public and private K-12 schools that are currently implementing a hybrid or full in-person protocol are advised to transition to online remote learning after the Thanksgiving holiday. Will the Board of Education finally realize that a return to 5-day in-person education is not a safe possibility? I have expressed to each of you individually as to my students' successes with the hybrid model, but at this time feel that the decision to all remote is the only safe possibility for the health and well-being of not only our students, but our teachers and staff as we weather the storm that is SARS-CoV-19. Number 9, Gazelle Kashlak. Thank you for keeping elementary students in hybrid learning model. Please prioritize our staff and student safety in your decisions regarding in-person learning and follow the Cuyahoga County Board of Health recommendations to help keep our community safe. Number 10, Lisa Galick. I appreciate Superintendent Magyar's decision to press pause on the return to 5 days a week, in-person learning for elementary students. Thank you also for closely watching the case numbers at the high school and carefully determining that it was no longer safe for students and staff to be in the building. This leadership and willingness to listen to data and reason will be important in the months ahead. I hope the members of the Board of Education will prioritize the health and safety of our students, staff, and families in the second semester of the year. The educational needs of our children are immensely important, but must be balanced with safety. Yesterday, there were over 7,000 new cases of coronavirus reported in Ohio. In the last 2 weeks, we've had 177 new cases diagnosed in Brecksville and Broadview Heights. Since the start of the school year, there have been 41 probable or confirmed cases, and 170 students and staff have been quarantined. We all want our children to be back in school full time, but until this is safe and reasonable to do so, we have to keep improving our district's hybrid and remote learning models. Number 11, Lisa Gaunter, maybe. I want to thank everyone for all that you do. I hope that we can all come together and stop going against science. We all want our kids back in school and life back to normal, but the time is not now. As the holidays roll around, it is going to get much worse before it gets better. It is projected after New Year's to be the worst. This is the year that did not happen, even though everything happened. Number 12. Cindy Habig, can you please consider going back to the original plan of remote after Thanksgiving for the rest of the semester? I feel it will keep kids and staff a little safer. I know it is important for kids to be in school, but we as parents can step up and help the teachers keep our kids on track. 13. Nicole Pisatello. When will the Board of Education Superintendent address the current disparity between our district and local private schools that continue to operate with 5 days of in-person instruction? As mentioned in the last work session, COVID is not going anywhere anytime soon. When can parents expect a 5-day model to be an available choice in the district? Technology is wonderful, but it is not a replacement for the valuable interactions our youngest students are missing. Our families deserve to be given a choice. 14 is from Molly Voris. When the board first made the decision this summer regarding COVID and school options, I was fully supportive and proud of our district leaders for taking a proactive stance in the wake of the pandemic. But this all changed a few weeks into school, and the board began the back and forth emails to parents in the district of what the plan was. It was a mess. I am in full support of the original decision the board made in the summer. I would like to add that the number of COVID-19 cases skyrocketing, with the number of COVID-19 cases skyrocketing and more cases happening within the district and county, to stick with the hybrid or even all online plan through the end of the school year. It is the safest for all. 15 from Michelle Hassman. We need to look at the community as a whole. We have a lot of elderly citizens, and keeping the schools open like this is not only inviting an outbreak in the school, but the communities as well. We all want the kids in school full time, but at what cost? I would think the stress of the rising numbers would be creating a lot of anxiety among our children. We should be standing out as a district that cares about our community, students, and staff. We are not looking that way. We look negligent and arrogant. 16. From Sarah Edwards. I would like to thank you for remaining hybrid until 2021, given the spread in our district, county, and state. Thank you for putting the safety of our teachers, staff, families, and most importantly, our children first. I have a 4th grader and a kindergartner. I, myself, have an underlying health condition. When making the decision for the remainder of the school year, I ask you to please look at all the data, the class sizes, spacing, and how this impacts the safety of everyone. This is one example of why 5 days all in is not safe for anyone. My youngest son is in kindergarten. He will have 25 classmates. The kids will not have 2 to 3 feet between them. In some cases, it is inches between them. Then for 25 to 30 minutes a day, they take their masks off to eat. This erases what you've done all day with mask wearing. Based on the CDC, 15 minutes of exposure, they exceed that in one lunch period. 5 days a week, that is 2.5 hours with no mask exposure. This is not physical or social distancing. I want or need my kids in front of their teacher. Hybrid is the only happy medium in all of this. When this all started, we knew kids would be behind. Unfortunately, the world is behind. This seems like forever, but this will be a small part of our lives. Safety has to be a priority. The virus and the spread is real. You can't outrun it. You can't beat it to the finish line with 5 days. Kids may not be affected in the way that older population is, but could you imagine if a child unknowingly brought home COVID and a parent becomes extremely sick or even worse? What will that do to the child's social and emotional well-being? No amount of time in the classroom or education can fix that. Education is very important, but safety and family is more important. It's just like work-life balance. You have to find a safe balance. We are worried about the safety of our kids, teachers, and staff. We all look to you as the leaders of our school district to keep the teachers, staff, families, and children in the safest school setting. Please give your teachers and staff the same consideration you have in meeting with social, physical distancing and limiting the amount of attendees for your safety. Thank you for your time. Stay safe and be well. 17, Pam Diker-Middow. Will the school district go fully remote as the county numbers of COVID cases rise and the Board of Health recommends that we do so? 18, for Michelle Toth. Both of our children in middle school have been learning 100% remote. While not ideal, it is working and they're safe. Please follow the health experts' recommendations to go online district-wide. It's a temporary situation that families can adapt to and could save their lives. 19. I think it's the same person. I am really concerned about the health and safety of the staff who are required to work in the district buildings during the pandemic, especially now that the COVID numbers are rising. Are they able to work remotely if they request to do so? Number 20, from Keith McMillan. Before you consider utilizing social media as an official form of communication for the district teachers, every member of the board and the district should have professional development around the negative effects of social media and the bias that is coded into the algorithms that are at the heart of these platforms. Two suggestions would be the social dilemma and coded bias. As educators and parents, we should be implementing policies that encourage parents and students from refraining from the use of social media. I would respectfully ask that you do not use social media for any official communication. Thank you. And last but not least, from Laura Putnam. 1 in 10 in-person hybrid students at the middle school and high school have been affected by COVID, whether testing positive or having to quarantine. And cases are still occurring at the high school, even though the students have not been in the building for almost a week. Medical experts still do not know the long-term effects of a child's health. Therefore, it is my hope that you will follow the recommendations of the Board of Health and suspend any in-person learning until the first of the year. Education can be made up, but major health issues can be forever. And as the trusted adults, we are obligated to keep our children safe, the children safe. That's all.
Oh, you sure?
I'm positive.
Okay, thank you very much for doing that. And please send those to me so we can respond. Thank you.
I shall.
Item 10, board business, other board business. We have a new board policy, first reading and adoption. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, comment?
Who was the second? Sorry. Thank you.
Sorry. Any comment on this, Mrs. Magyar?
No comment other than this is a policy that I was asked to put on. It was one that we currently did not have. And so these are suggestions based on some of the comments that we heard from public comment dealing specifically with social media.
Yep. Thank you very much. Roll call?
Mr. Dosen?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yeah.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack?
Yes. Item C, Neola policy update, second reading and adoption. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call?
Mr. Dosen?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yeah.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack?
Yes. Item E, adopt resolution in support of fair school funding. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and this is what you addressed earlier in the meeting.
Yes.
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay, roll call?
Mr. Dosen?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yeah.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack?
Yes. Item 11, superintendent's other business. We have A, school bus purchasing, B, passenger van purchase, C, high school and middle school roof replacement, D, payment in lieu of transportation, E, nutrition standards of school lunch, F, approval of superintendent's other business. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Does the board have any questions about any of the items in this agenda, in this consent agenda?
Sorry, I just wanted to circle back on the adoption we passed for support of fair school funding. Can we have somebody communicate our resolution to legislature?
Yes, we're going to send the official resolution to our state senator and representative.
Okay, great. Is that going to be email or snail mail?
We'll probably do both.
Okay. If you do email, if you could copy the board on it, that'd be appreciated.
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay.
Any questions on any of the items in this consent agenda?
No. Roll call?
Mr. Dosen,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yeah.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman,
Yes.
Mrs. Mack.
Yes. Item 12, Superintendent's Consent Agenda. We have A, certified recommendations, B, classified recommendations, C, supplemental recommendations. I just moved too fast, sorry. I can't get it to move back. Sorry. D, approval of superintendent's consent agenda. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Dosen,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yeah.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman,
Yes.
Mrs. Mack.
Yes. Why are you looking at me that way?
I didn't know if you wanted to ask if anybody had any questions before we went to roll call, but I'm going to guess no.
We usually don't comment on it, on employment, so.
Well, I mean, each one of these consent agendas, usually we just find out if any, usually we just find out.
Would you like me to
anybody-
backtrack, Mr.
Nope,
Dosen?
nope, we're all good. Unless anybody
Apologies.
has any questions, it's all good.
Item 13, Treasurer's Consent Agenda. May I have A, financial report, B, approval of 5-year forecast, C, donations, D, minutes, and E, approval of Treasurer's Consent Agenda. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Okay. Any questions or discussion?
I believe Craig would
So-
like to present to us.
Yes, I will keep it brief. So the first one is the regular financial reports. I won't focus there because we're obviously approving the 5-year forecast, which is the big deal. The donation actually just came in today. So we are accepting that with gratitude, and then just the minutes. So the 5-year forecast, let me get to the presentation. The good news is, I guess, is a lot of this echoes what Mr. Gilbride is seeing from CVCC. And while we are going to deficit spend, the good news is we're in a little bit better position than we were in May, just because the legislature did help us, which I will talk about. So just some of those quick things to point out about a forecast is that it's a living document. This is going to change practically every day, especially when Mr. Code comes down to my office. It has to change sometimes within minutes, right, Mr. Code? No, I like to give him a hard time. Some of the assumptions laid out here in the presentation are in no way representative of a baseline for any current or future negotiations in our collective bargaining agreements. And again, we're still dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. So all schools continue to be an uncharted territory, both academically and financially. We'll continue to monitor the situation as information becomes available. So I kind of focus on the KISS statement, the keep it simple statement of where we were. So the top one basically talks about where we were in the spring, where it was kind of a gloom and doom situation of the state was going to cut us. I kind of outlined these down here for, back that out just a smidge. We were supposed to be slated to lose over $1 million in fiscal 20, and then it was going to carry over into 21. So legislative action took place that helped us get some of those dollars back, which is why a lot of, we had some increases in revenue. We are assuming that we slowly return to fiscal 19 state funding levels. So we had huge declines, and we're going to just gradually bring that back in this forecast. And that seems to be the best knowledge that we have at the time. And then we've slowed the growth in real estate. We will have a triennial update here soon. But we've slowed some of that growth in real estate just because we don't know what's going to happen. We've not seen delinquencies. So far, so good, but I think everyone's still kind of cautiously optimistic that we're not going to see a huge economic downturn, but that's still yet to be seen. We've not included any projection of fair school funding in this model in terms of revenues. If this fair school model funding would pass and it was fully funded, and again, I want to emphasize fully funded, which we don't know if that's going to happen. So it could happen in a two-step process. If it's fully funded, the district would benefit over $500,000, which would be great. But no one is expecting, step one is trying to get this passed. There's a large likelihood that it will get passed, if it does get passed, and it will not be fully funded. So we may not see an increase from the get-go until they can actually make those implementation changes and get it fully funded. So again, it's still too new, so there's been no projection that that's actually happening, and it still could not pass. So we'll see, and we'll monitor it. On the expenditure side, we have seen Salaries increase. We still had step increases. We still had a collective bargaining agreement that had a 2% salary increase starting in whether it was July or August or September for our staffs and our collective bargaining agreements. We luckily, partially due to the COVID pandemic, which seems strange, but we took a 0% in our benefits for fiscal 21. I'll fix that. 9% increases though are projected throughout. We don't know what's going to happen with medical costs. We have some, as we know, we had elective procedures that were kind of backburnered, so we don't know when that's going to catch up with us. So we're kind of just, again, cautiously optimistic about the benefits, but still making sure we're planning for a healthy, I guess, financial piece to be prepared for whatever. Purchase services and supplies, we're holding steady with some reductions that have been in place. We have no assumption yet for moving to the new building. COVID has us all pretty busy, so we've not had a chance to really sit down as a team and kind of work through those things, but we'll get those are on the docket. And then capital outlay projects, still may need to be adjusted as we move forward. So as you mentioned earlier, we have a lot of PI, projects that are on the docket, and we don't know if some of those may have to come from the general fund or not. So we have a better strategy, and we may not need to use that, but we want to leave those options on the table.
I have a quick question, Craig. Is your reference to capital outlay projects, is that a reference to Chris's list of permanent?
It's a reference to his list, but we've been funding those with obviously the PI fund and the PI money. Okay. So we do spend some money every year out of the general fund, but this is specifically talking about the general fund if we would have to ever use that for capital outlay. Okay. Okay.
Thanks.
Could I, while we're on the screen, maybe could you make it bigger so those numbers are easier to see? Maybe you could move Joelle's window off to the left so we could see the numbers.
Gotta move, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that, what I wanted to highlight is that what's up top was the forecast numbers from May, which you see they run from 2020 to 2024. And now here in November, we add another year, which is why it goes 2021 to 2025. And so if you were to look at 2024 and the ending cash balance, so if you look at the grid up top and go to the lower right-hand corner, the ending cash balance back in May, right up all the way to the right,
this one.
is a little over $11 million. So as of last May in our forecast, we thought by 2024 we would end up with $11 million in the bank. And now if you go down to the revised, we have 13.7. So there has been improvement, and Craig walked through some of the changes. One of the big ones was the funding cuts that we got from the state back in May that we thought were going to be more draconian, and then they dialed them back, and that improved some of our financials. The other thing I want to point out is that if you look at the revenue surplus or deficit line, you'll see it's negative all the way through, which means we're deficit spending. So we're starting to spend down our cash. So, this is the situation where, we either need to, pay close attention to see if we can slow the rise of expenses. There's very little we can do on a revenue side other than the state giving us more revenue or us going back out to taxpayers for new money. But we have some levers in our control to try to elongate the time that we can live off of our cash balance. So, but it is important to note that, we are going to be in a deficit spending mode, and the more we can slow that, the longer we can push out the need to go back to our voters for more of their generosity.
Sorry, I'll move her back. So this again talks about the revenue history and assumptions with unrestricted state aid. We did realize a reduction of state aid by about $500,000. It was supposed to be again 1.1 million. Later, that legislative action helped. We have absorbed approximately an extra. By the time they took that money from us, we had to absorb 100,000 on top of this fiscal year because we had already been paid technically too much last year. So we've been told that the fiscal 21 levels should remain intact, which is good. We've not been told that there will be need to take any more for this year. And then in fiscal 24, we would assume our return to fiscal 19 funding levels, provided nothing else changes. So, I mean, that's a huge span of time to basically get back to the same levels where we were back in fiscal 19. So as you know, Mr. Dosen pointed out, we don't have a lot of tools to help us with revenue. So we're going to continue to watch all of this. And again, fair school funding could potentially drive additional dollars if it passes and would be fully funded. Okay, when it comes to restricted grants and aid, this is our economically disadvantaged career and tech funding and catastrophic aid. We have a lot. So at my prior district, we did not have a lot of catastrophic aid, but it's something that I'm working with Mrs. Tomasetti on. We have some students here that it actually costs over $100,000 to educate those students a year. And that's where we're able to file catastrophic aid with the state of Ohio. So we do, while it's good that we get a portion of that back, we get about $200,000 back, but our expenditures are over $2 million for some of these students. So we're going to be working cooperatively together to figure out how we can try to reduce some of those costs. Some of them we can try to bring back into the district, which we've already done. So if catastrophic aid decreases, that is most likely going to be a good thing for us. And we're going to kind of keep focusing on this area. The property tax allocation is your homestead rollback. Other revenue can vary all the time. We've seen some increases with the workman's comp, so that kind of falls in the other revenue category. And then once again, we've not included any revenue regarding the TIF into the forecast. We would not receive that on our books until fiscal year 2024. So it's still kind of a ways out, and so we'll kind of monitor that as we go, but we've not included any of that in the forecast. On the expenditure side, we have, personnel services accounts for, 62% of our expenditures. This assumes the 2% base increase in 21, 1% in 22 through 25. Steps continue, and again, continuing to work with People Services on the results of our special education audit, which says we have some overstaffing. But this process could take anywhere from 2 to 4 years to work out. On the benefit side, again, I kind of highlighted some of those earlier. On purchase services, counts for 10% of our total expenditures approximately. This is tuition for special education tuition, special education transportation, which we've worked on reductions in this category. It's part of why we're buying some of these vans and buses, smaller buses, I guess, so we can transport those students on our own more cost effectively. Legal fees, substitutes, and utilities fall into this, and we are working on reductions of some contracts. They are assumed in the forecast. On supplies, we obviously are spending more on supplies due to COVID-19. We've exhausted all of those federal dollars at this point. So luckily, we purchased a lot with those dollars, and we're hoping to keep those expenditures under control. And then again, capital outlay. Mr. Code, Ms. Magyar, and I have met with a bunch of different firms to look at energy savings projects that may have to be financed. We're going to look at this closely. We have a potential for a ton of savings, and this would also be able to be dually working in conjunction with some of those PI projects. So we're going to kind of continue to digest those presentations, those numbers, and then we'll be bringing that to the board sometime in December and January with some more information.
And can I just, the bullet point on the left, reductions of some contracts are assumed. Can you be more specific? What is that?
So it just depends. So we're like right now, we're working on any contract that we can find that we can reduce. For instance, I'm working on like the postage machine, potential savings on that. We're going to be looking, Mr. Code and I are going to be talking about copiers soon for potential savings. So anything that's a contract that we can try to reduce, we're going to continue to do so. And then just a couple general comments that I have. I think we've done an excellent job in reining in our expenditures and utilizing our federal dollars. We've dramatically improved our efficiencies, particularly in the fiscal office as we've worked towards a new purchasing, payroll, HR, budgeting software, which is going to automate a ton of processes for everyone, which should reduce as much need for manpower and making things far more efficient. Salaries and benefits account for the majority of our expenditures, so we need to closely monitor these in order to maintain our financial success. Again, that new building assumption is that We've not had enough time to kind of digest all of this yet. We will look for that in the May 2021 update. And, you know, as an advisement to the board, if this scenario would play out as it is, and again, it can change any minute, the district may need to consider additional levy dollars in about 2023. So we're going to try to get as much runway as we can with that and be good stewards of the public money. But as of right now, if this scenario would play out, that is when we should, in my opinion, at least be starting to look at those options. That's it. Thanks.
Any other questions, additional questions? Okay, roll call.
Mr. Dosen?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yeah.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack?
Yes. Item 14, closing items. We have A, announcements, B, adjournment. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any announcements?
Yeah, it's in there. Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
I was gonna sort of ad hoc, there's a robotics competition this weekend, so I don't know if Ms. Maggie was gonna jump in, but.
No, it's
Oh, did it get canceled?
Yes.
A few hours.
Just kidding. My apologies, I have no announcements.
Okay, roll call.
Mr. Dosen?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman?
Defeatedly, yes.
Mrs. Mack?
Yes. You're now adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks.